Right, so I've wet the paper first, just so it has an opportunity just to seep in a little bit, and the gloss on the wet paper is gradually subsiding. So I'm starting with raw sienna. I'm going to apply it with a flat brush, a large flat brush, and I'm beginning, as mentioned, fairly weak, trying to keep those brush strokes fairly horizontal. And as we come down towards the horizon line, I just want to strengthen that, as I've mentioned, just a little bit. And the fact that we wet the paper first does allow us to work into the colour and gradually softening it. So I'm bringing that over the landscape all the way down to the horizon line. And then just taking a bit of the colour off the brush, I can soften that back just a little bit. It grades out because it goes towards the top. I think I've said in the text that your first wash, I think, is probably one of the best parts of the painting, and it will have influence over the rest of the colouring that you add later. So now I'm weakening it just a little bit as we go over the sea. I'm not too precious about being exact with that colour, but I want to indicate a slight variation. If it's not weak enough, then just dry your brush a little bit on a bit of tissue and take a bit out. And because the paper is still wet, we've got the chance of mucking about with the colour as we put it on. So the wet sand, the sort of the sand that picks up the colour from the sky, I'm just increasing the intensity of the colour, and then as we work down towards the bottom, I'm just weakening it off again. And that can be tweaked a little bit if it's not giving you quite the effect that you want. So wash your brush, dry it, and if it's not going the way you want it, just take a little bit out. So that's where the sea is. Perhaps just a little bit out that corner. And then what I'd like to suggest is, if you refer back to your photograph, you'll see that there's quite an intensity of red which is above the horizon line, somewhere about here. There are lines of it, and my suggestion is that with a smaller flat brush, dampen it and just try and make it flat. Just take a little bit of the colour out, cleaning your brush, because I'd like, when we put the next wash on, which will be a crimson, I'd like those little bits just to become a bit more intense. And as I look at the photograph, it comes this way a little bit. So I'm adding to the variation of colour by lifting out while it's still wet. You've got to be aware that the colour may seep back in, again because the paper's wet, so you can just keep pulling it out a little bit. And then my suggestion is you leave that to dry if you can. You've got all the time in the world, so put it to one side and let it dry naturally.